Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of SDRescue. I am your favorite Ryan Gosling lookalike, Austin Fuller, joined once again by our email copywriting expert, Grayson Fulbright. Grayson, why should the people listen today?
Well, this is going to be an interesting one. And just a little disclaimer, this has been probably one of the hardest ones I had to rewrite, specifically because I wasn't as educated in the industry. So you'll get a good look at how I can apply copywriting skills when you're not necessarily at an advantage in terms of expertise. I think the email we're going to be breaking down is using a tactic a lot of people use, which is bullet points, right? The shorter the email or the better format of the email, the more likely someone will hopefully read it. So we're going to look at one way somebody used bullet points in an email and kind of talk about why it didn't work, where it is working, and how we can improve it.
Excellent. Yeah, I think so. Another interesting part about this email is written from someone who is selling to service providers. So if you're selling to someone who provides a service to somebody else, and even there might even be SDRs out there that are trying to do like channel partnerships or things like that, or if you are a channel manager, this could be interesting to you. I mean, there's just I agree, as I read through this one, there's a lot of difficult nuances to overcome, and it's really interesting to see how to overcome those. So let's jump right here into the email here. All right, and as you can see, this email does use bullet points, and that's pretty much all the formatting you get. Hi, Austin. A 1-minute read for you. Here's a bullet pointed email to keep it simple. Who am I? Here's my title at this company. What is this company? We are focused exclusively on aggregating and simplifying the distribution of cloud solutions and services to empower managed service providers. Why am I reaching out to you? Many of our partners switched to us because they found that support was lacking, billing was complex, and provisioning took them too long. This is where someone like me comes in. Why does this matter to you? We provide instant provisioning, simplified billing, and free PSA integrations. What is the next action if you want to learn more? Hit reply with the body, show me, and I'll send you some times for a demo, or you can book a time with me here. Thanks for reading. I hope to hear from you soon. Okay. Well, let's see if I can get all of our color codes in there. There we go. So this email does something. It tries really hard at being concise. And I think as we'll compare the two, there's a difference between I think it tries too hard to be concise, right? It says, hey, here's a bullet pointed email. And then he bullet points out questions and then answers. The thing is here is that there's actually some really good bits. As you can see, there's a lot of orange, but there's a lot of not orange after some of those questions. And those are the quality components. If you can just reword how you present the green and purple and yellow in here, I think you can have a really good email.
Yeah, I think this email does well because I think it asks the right questions. So there's
Yes.
that. I think other than the first one, which is who am I, which I think especially a cold email, that's not as important as is the thing I'm bringing to you and is the thing I'm talking about gonna matter to you. I might have maybe just introduced yourself instead of saying a 1-minute read for you and then starting with something irrelevant, because you already started the email without introducing yourself. So I would have just removed it at that point. But I do have to say that he did this person did focus on the right questions. So what are we? Why am I reaching out? Why does this matter? I think the problem with this email is actually the flow of information going on. I think one problem that I had when I read this email initially was that each question connects, but you really got to be reading it and really got to be trying to understand the message behind it, because otherwise you just read each bullet point and it's like an independent standing thing. That's one of the things I tried to do in the rewrite, is kind of reorganize this idea. But I think, when we talk about kind of the journey that a buyer goes through when they read this, they're going to read what is the brand, and they're going to immediately get a pitch. And then all of a sudden you're going to say, why does that matter? And you kind of bring in a bigger pitch talking about problems. And then you say, why does it matter to you? And then you kind of answer, I guess, the problems with some good future states, but you don't actually connect them. It kind of leaves the reader having to say, oh, okay, this is what they do, these are the problems they solve, and here's how they solve them. It doesn't directly say that. And I think overall, this email would have done much better if it focused on how each bullet point kind of works together in the email.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. So look, I work for a managed services provider. That's what we do, and it's part of what we do. I don't know what a PSA integration is. I'm just gonna tell you right now. I would be careful. So that's an assumption, right? When you're using acronyms in your benefits or even in your problems, when you make assumptions, I think you want to make sure that the problems that so like the problems they list, I think are all good, right? We found that support was lacking. That can be a problem in any industry. Billing was complex. So a managed service provider is somebody that provides services to a customer and does that as a sort of a middleman between other companies. So like, for example, firewall management. So you have to get a firewall license, you have to get a firewall, you have to get, and they string all this stuff together that's really complex to build a nice, your IT infrastructure. Billing is complex. Provisioning can take a while. Support can be lacking because you have to go to the problem is that the customer of the MSP doesn't want to deal with the complexity, so they want to pay someone else to deal with it, right? So I think their problems are good because they're talking about everything that's the nature of the business. They actually might be a little too generic. I think there's a lot of times where, like, so for example, as a sales leader, people get, the pitch is always accelerate sales, grow revenue, get more meetings, right? I mean, it's always that sort of stuff. So I would be careful in the caveat to this is I agree these are problems, but I think being specific with your problems will help you when you get to that next question, write more specific, unique ways that you provide solutions or you can be useful, which helps you stand out in your outreach.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing I want to bring up about this email is I don't agree with them bullet pointing next steps. I think that is the reason why you're reaching out to them, and that should be where the conversation starts. So like, fine, bullet point your pitch and why it should matter, but like, I just don't personally agree with kind of like the passive next steps, like, oh, I don't care, but if you want to do it, here's what you need to do. I feel like that turns people off, because it's like, if I am reading this, like, I guess I'll just do more research on your company. And like, why say show me? Like, what if I don't want a demo yet? What if I have questions? I feel like this is kind of forcing the next step to be a specific thing, which kind of behind the scenes is going to turn people off from actually taking action or responding, because people like me who would say, oh, well, I don't immediately want a demo. Well, now they're put in a position of conflict where a stranger reached out to them via email, maybe got them interested, but now they like want or demand something from them that they don't necessarily are ready for. I think that puts people in an awkward position. And instead, I would make the next steps like the conversation in the email. You got one line on top, cool. You got a thanks for reading at the bottom, cool. But you should have a standalone sentence that's not jumbled into all this bullet point format that's trying to call them to action. That's why it's a call to action. It shouldn't be in this little block. It should be a thing that sticks out and says, will you do this? Are you interested? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a good point. You've bullet pointed your call to action, which makes it a list item technically, right? Like, you should read it, but you shouldn't take action on it, which nullifies the point of call to action. I actually disagree with all of the bullet points, right? I think the bullet points, so for people who are familiar with HTML, and I don't think any of our audience should be, but if you are, kudos. In HTML, bullet points are what's known as an unordered list, right? So UL is the tag for bullet pointing content in HTML. And so if you need to make a list of things that don't need to be in numerical order, you get bullet points. And all they've done is bullet pointed, but what that is to make it easier to read an unordered list of items. The problem is they've put each of their questions in the list as a list item. And what the result is, like what you said, the questions have no cohesion. There's no cohesive flow of an idea or concept in reading this email. It's an unordered list of separate ideas. So that's if you were going to use bullet points here, why, well, you know, where it says why many of our partners switched to us because they found that bullet point 1, bullet point 2, bullet point 3, right? Those are unrelated list items that if you put in a concise list, make it easier to read. Bullet points in this case, actually the formatting disrupts the idea of the email for me. Like I opened this and the reason I put it in here was because it's an eyesore to scan, right? If you're trying to speed read this, you don't know where to go because every topic in the email is a bullet point. I actually have to read the whole email to know what it says. The bullet points are supposed to tell me where to go to read, except the whole thing is bullet points. So as far as like a formatting, because formatting is important because if your email, look, I read my emails. I don't read all of them, but they have to pass a scan test. But some executives don't read emails. You just get the scan, and that's it. And I would say if this was to an executive, it's getting deleted. I don't even, if your preview and your subject line and everything got them to open it, they're not reading this. It's just not formatted properly. They don't know where to read.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think another thing to mention too, because you made really good points about the use of bullet points. And I think when you use bullet points, the whole point, I keep saying point, is to get an idea across very quickly. And so when you're using sentences, bullet points indent your spacing, so it gives you less space. So like when you write really long or multiple sentences in a bullet point, it can actually work against you and like create the illusion of a much longer email. One thing I wanted to try really quick on this doc is see if I can remove the bullet points and see if it gets shorter or more concise. Yeah, look, that's much more spacious already before I even take out the indentation. I can actually read and understand and see the questions better just by getting rid of the tight paragraph spacing bullet points. I think if we go back to the bullet points, you see how bunched and crowded it looks, and I'm much less incentivized to even start reading it, let alone kind of like pick all the information out of it and organize it into the thought that you want me to get.
Yeah, you'd be better off. Frankly, if you want to do this, like if you wanted to rewrite this just with formatting, you'd be better off putting "Who am I" as a header 1, and then enter line, enter. What is our company? Under header 1, enter. Right, up in the top left up here. Oh, here I am thinking I'm moving my mouse. I'm not. Up here where it says normal text, where if you were just like, if you rip these bullet points out really quick, I'll do this really quick. You'd be better off if you wanted to rewrite this just from a formatting perspective. Heading 1, who am I? Oh, freak. Here I go doing this again. And I mean, not that big. This isn't Word, this is Google. So whatever I use, look at me, I'm destroying this whole email. But you'd use,
yes, you are.
But header 2 and then make this normal text. You know what I mean? This is how they wrote it, like text wise, like syntax wise. This is what they wrote. Question, answer, like an FAQ document.
Right.
But they did not format it like an FAQ document. They just put the whole thing in bullets and said, here, it's easy to read. It's in bullets.
Yeah, I think at the very least, it might have been more organized and eye-catching if they already have it bulky. Just go beyond, go for it, and make sub-bullet points. So it's like you can clearly see the question in the main bullet, and then go down and see the answer, and then see the question of the next bullet, and yada yada yada. But overall, I think this person brought the information that they needed to convince someone. I just don't think it was organized in the best way, and it was structured in such a way that it could turn people off from reading it or make it more difficult for them to interpret what you're saying.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pull it away from the color codes just so everybody can see this again. Like, here's what it looked like in my inbox. Well, it was a different font. It was Calibri, but give me a break. The first question is really short, and it's only one line. So for the second bullet, I know where to look, except the sentence goes on for 2 lines, and now I have to hunt around for the questions, right? And there's no distinct difference to visually tip me off as to where the questions are, except for the fact that they follow the bullet, right? It's the whatever's next to the bullet. It's hard to read. And like you said, I really think that there's some good content in here that could be a convincing email that could be relevant to a buyer, except it's all buried underneath all of the bad formatting and stuff like that, to where it's really hard to find. And so you really have to put in the extra effort. And I think any SDR watching here is like, people aren't putting in the extra effort to thoroughly comb through your emails. And that's why email is becoming less and less effective. Unless you're Grayson, because then your emails look like this.
I wish. There is no magic bullet to sales emails. Let me tell you that. I get rejected on the daily.
There are magic markers, though.
There are magic markers and crayons you can use, all sorts of colors. Cool. Do you want to read this one? Or
Yeah,
do you want me to hop in?
I can read the rewrite. Hey, Austin, I see you offer managed cloud solutions and likely deal with clients that seek simplicity over complexity, or more than complexity. MSPs often struggle to simplify the cloud, which can create friction for both the team and clients. Complicated billing, lack of support, and provisioning delays can make it harder to manage multiple cloud products as a portfolio grows, and can easily frustrate new customers. To reduce complexity, top MSPs like this one and this one use our company to streamline their cloud management process and gain deeper visibility into day-to-day cloud ops. Could I send a quick overview of our company, see if it makes sense to discuss further? Alternatively, I'd be happy to share a demo of how we could help you. Okay, so first off, no question this week. No question opener. He's throwing the curveball. He's like, no, I got something new for you. So the first thing you do is you state a problem. First of all, well, actually you don't state a problem. You state that you understand their reality. And that's what I like. So they say, hey, you deal with clients that like simplicity over complexity, because ultimately you tie that back in later. Spoiler alert for the email, right? Hey, your job is to make a client's complicated life simple. That's why they use you. Well, managed service providers, as you'll go in, often struggle to simplify the cloud, and they do. The cloud is working in cloud infrastructure is very, very difficult. I mean, I didn't know this up until a couple of years ago, but there's cloud routers, cloud firewalls, right? We have virtualized hardware. Think about that. Like what used to be a device that you plug into a wall and plug cables into is now completely digital. So it gets very complex. And then you list the problems, which are great. So you've done two things. I now understand that you understand my business, which I think as an SDR is really, really hard for SDRs to do, right? Getting that credibility is a big deal. That at least you understand what I'm trying to do conceptually from a business standpoint. You've listed off some pains, some problems that I have in accomplishing that goal for my customers, and it actually ends up being the same problem, right? That's what's cool. And then how you think you can help. So, I mean, I think this is a much more logical flow of ideas. So like we talked about above, that we didn't really change a whole lot of the content. A lot of the words are the same. A lot of the problems are the same. But it's now laid out in a I don't want to say a logical flow, but it's in an emotional flow where this invokes emotion in me as I read it, which is what you're really trying to do with writing.
Yeah. I wanted to make like two initial points on this, on kind of how I tried to improve the original email. First and foremost is information flow. You called it out, Austin, but when I write emails, I tend to try my best. That doesn't always happen depending on how you format it, but I always try my best to, in the first line, be able to state something that's going to come back around and help push next steps. And if you can somehow tie in a topic through all the sentences, it paints a picture without them having to actually like read through it. Like if you just kind of skimmed through this, you'd see, I see you offer managed solutions, duh. Simplicity over complexity, yeah. Ooh, struggling to simplify, friction, team and clients, complicated billing. I think if you kind of skim through this, you can get the point of what it's talking about without actually reading the whole sentence, without actually trying to connect all the dots. And that's good. Because if someone does skim it, like they'll still get it. and they'll still be able to like actually absorb it. Whereas if it's complicated or bulky or a very long form email, there's a chance that it might be a great message, but just no one's willing to read it, or no one has the time to actually read it. And so information flow is important. I tried to make the comparison of simplicity versus complexity throughout the entire email. The second piece that I did as kind of an add-on is I reframed what they called problems. I want to shout out Keenan again and his gap selling book, but I feel like what they identified as problems were actually technical problems.
Yes.
Like, you have a problem with this software because complicated billing, because no support, because delays in provisioning. But what's the actual consequences of that? What's the impact of those problems existing? So I wanted to take it a step further, and you notice like I highlighted what they considered problems as actually storytelling, because those aren't the problems I wanted to focus on. I want them to focus on the fact that it's going to be harder to manage more clients as their portfolios grow, and it's going to frustrate those new clients. That's what really matters, because IT service providers, they usually try to go for longer term engagements, and keeping clients happy is an active job. And so if you start out the gate as things already being complicated and expectations aren't being met, that's just going to make it really hard for your team and your service division to actually follow through. So I tried my best to actually show and reveal the pains that I think people would care about.
Yeah, I actually found it really interesting that this person targeted me as a because I mean, this would probably be right up the alley for our ops team. But I like this. I like the social proof. I think it's better. You know, above their social proof was weaker. They said, I think they just said our clients use us, right? Is that what they said?
Many brands, many of our partners switched to brands.
Oh yeah, many of our partners switched to us. Many of our partners. Yeah, that's right. Get specific. You know, and we've talked about before. I mean, and I think this is kind of beating like a dead horse now at this point about social proof. But if you have customers that look like them or are similar to them, that's ideal. But anyway, you could at least say, you know, another good way of doing social proof is, hey, these customers had these problems, even if they're different, you know, even if their companies look totally different or they're in different industries. That's ideal. So, I mean, you did that here, said, hey, to reduce complexities, this company, use our company to do this and this, which is way better than just saying our people use us, our customers use us because X, Y, Z. It turns into a customer story, right? And a micro case study instead of we have customers. Look, everyone has customers, hopefully. I mean, maybe you don't. I mean, if you're an SDR at a company that doesn't have any customers, I'm sorry. But you'll get there. You'll get customers. But a lot of you have customers. And so if you have some you can name drop, and I'm not even talking like, again, name dropping for logo's sake. I'm just saying, like, if you can reference actual stories or actual experiences of solving problems that are specific, like Grayson said, if you haven't read Gap Selling, I definitely recommend it, where you can tell the customer story of what the business problem and business impact was for them, all the better. And you can do that in 1 or 2 lines. You don't have to actually tell the whole story.
That's right.
What about the call to action? You want to talk about the CTA? There's 2 of them.
Yeah. I was actually going to go in there. Yeah. So I thought I'd kind of make a play on this other version where they kind of made the assumption, or kind of played hard to get, where it's like, ooh, want to do next steps?
Hit reply.
You got to do these specific things. So instead, I actually wanted to do a split ask, where in some industries, you can make the argument that it's better to get the low-hanging fruit, the bottom of funnel leads, directly ask for the demo, and then maybe offer the potential for something lighter if they don't want to. But in this situation, with it being IT managed service, cloud solutions, which is much more complicated, I actually tried to do the opposite, where I led with something lighter, because I expect most of the people are probably not in the right part of their buying cycle. Maybe they already have a provider. And so I tried to start with something light, which I think would get more responses, which I think matters. And instead, I made the demo something for the low-hanging fruit as an alternative. I think framing for a CTA is very important. And it's all about like what you're trying to get out of them and how they perceive you. I think in this situation, people would probably appreciate if they did want a demo, that I offered to just do the work for them to send them information. People appreciate that rather than saying, oh, do you want information? Then you have to take this next step and then get back to me. That makes it feel like they're chasing you. And we're well past that stage with the buyer versus seller's market.
Yeah, I think too, this is, so I always, when it comes to objections, I always try to preempt them as much as I can, right? I think that's somewhere in, so again, Gap Selling talks about it, Challenger talks about it. There's a lot of, in some way, shape, or form, right? Pitch Anything, Pitch Mastery, Oren Klaff's program talks about it a lot, where they have different ways of essentially moving and eliminating objections before they come up. So like Keenan emphasizes discovery, right? He wants to figure out anything and everything that's going to be moving inside that company that could torpedo his deal, which is awesome. I love that notion. And guess what? For SDRs, if you're an SDR and you've never heard, can you send me some information or send me an email with the information when you've called somebody, right? That is the objection. Send me an email. What, at least from my mind, when I read this, hey, can I send you an email with information in it? That's your first call to action. Alternatively, I'd be happy to share a demo. You're preempting the send me an email objection. Because if you just, guess what? I bet the reason you get a lot of the, at least I felt like when I was an SDR, the reason I felt like I got the send me an email objection was because the buyer didn't feel like it was their choice. And so this was them injecting their own agency back into the sales process. You've given them a choice. Hey, because if I've read this far and I'm actually interested, what's going to be better? Probably getting on the phone with you and asking specific questions. Because look, there's a lot of complicated technologies, where you fit in our stack, what you'd actually do we align? Also, that's not going to be in a brochure. It's not going to be in an email. But you've given me the option to choose. If I want the brochure, I can. You've asked, but I don't want to tell you yes. Not to the first time you ask.
That's a really good point. I think another thing to keep in mind too is the number of like accepted next steps that a prospect takes increases the likelihood that they're going to continue forward and end up closing a deal. And so like I think the conventional wisdom is you cold call them and then you follow up with an email. And what happens most time is you cold call somebody who's unprepared and a little surprised and scared, and they respond to, sure, send me more information via email, which is then a channel which they can easily filter you and remember to ignore you. But if you flip it on its head, send them, like, maybe connect with them first so that they know you. That's one step. And then send them an email like this, already preempting another step that's easy. So then if they say yes to sending an overview, say, great, send them the overview. That's another touch. And then call them asking about the overview. That's a build up in the relationship rather than a surprise them on a call and then agree to bug them when, usually people respond with sending me more info on a call because they don't want to deal with you. I think when you use emails, and that's a good point also, you don't have to use it just for that channel. I think this person could have probably actually, if they sent my rewrite, they could have called them about the split CTA and say, hey, I just wanted to follow up on the email that I sent because, I have the overview right here on my desktop and I have your email up. I'd be happy to send it. And I also have some availability later this week to do a demo. Would you have, 5 to 10 seconds to let me know how you're feeling about that email? You can always go for that. And I think it's better to focus on getting people to say yes, rather than just acting like we're so important that you must go through these predetermined steps to get a conversation with our salespeople. Like, I think that's going to be really, really hard to get people's attention and resonate that way.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the split CTA does set up additional plays. So yeah, I mean, if you call them with reason, say, hey, look, I sent you that email. I have an overview about what we can do for MSPs that are experiencing X and Y. And it looks like you might be experiencing that because whatever. That's going to be a good phone call. You're at least going to leave a good impression, even if the two problems or two reasons you're calling them and have put that overview together are irrelevant. And they're like, no, actually, we don't have any of those problems. Well, good. You saved yourself a bunch of time. They've disqualified themselves a little bit, but it's going to, I don't get any calls like that, right? Nobody. And I mean, we're talking about all of the sales tech vendors that put out here's how to do a cold call perfectly. right? I get none of that. None. I get none of the problem stuff. I get none of the, Austin, it looks like you may be going through this or this. Or, hey, looking at what you do and how big your team size, it's always the same stuff. Austin, we're going to grow your sales and book more demos and more pipe, and it's going to be you're going to make so much more money. Can I have 15 minutes? That's how it goes. Like, I just think that if you're going to talk to decision maker level individuals, you got to up your game and understand that if the more specific you can get, the better. And your split CTA really helps run it like from a conceptual point of view, you can run a lot more tailored plays in your sequence if the CTA isn't always give me 15 minutes or whatever. And like I said, I really think it helps because you offer it first. I think just psychologically it's pretty genius because people be averse to saying yes to the first thing you ask them. And so you ask them hey, can I send you the email with information? They're like, no, give me the demo. I want the demo. That's the best part for me. That's the best. I know that happens. I know for sure that would happen.
I mean, I get demos from it, so a CTA that's split work sometimes. It does look like we're at the top of the hour.
We are.
For everyone who joined us today, thank you so much. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please connect with Austin Fuller and myself, Grayson Fulbright, on LinkedIn. We're happy to chat about email, review your outbound cadences, give feedback, talk, train, mentor. We're all about community, connection, and learning. So definitely give us a shout out, and we will see you next week, Monday, 11:30 Eastern.
See you, everybody.